Welcome back to class. The past few weeks we've talked about carbohydrates, we've talked about lipids, and we've seen how important they are. These are two macronutrients. The third macronutrient we are going to talk about today is proteins. And our learning objectives for this class is that at the end of this session, you should be able to identify food sources of protein that are of importance to health, classify amino acids and their importance to the body, describe the digestion of protein, absorption and transport of amino acids in the body, explain the role of proteins and amino acids in the body, deliberate on the potential physical problems from eating very little or too much of proteins. Very, very important. So, what are proteins? Proteins are made up of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen atoms that are formed into basic units called amino acids. So, normally we say amino acids are the basic units of proteins. They are the basic units of proteins, an important group of the macronutrients. Proteins are found in every cell, both plant and animal cells. And when I talk of animals, including insects, all kinds, worms, everything, they all contain some protein. The body needs proteins to build and repair all body tissues, Protein is an important part of the blood cells. So you see how important protein is. And the functions that protein plays, no other nutrients can do that. What makes protein so unique from carbohydrates and fat is that protein contains the element nitrogen. When you take carbohydrates and lipids and proteins, the common elements in them are carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. But when you take protein, in addition to carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, it also contains nitrogen. And that is what makes it so unique. So you can form fat, you can form carbohydrate from protein, but you cannot form protein from them. That is why it is important that we do not use protein. Although protein can give us energy, we do not use it for energy. 1 gram of protein will also give us 4 calories of energy, the same calories as carbohydrate. But because of the nitrogen that carbohydrate does not contain, it is not advisable to use protein for energy. And more so in our part of the world, protein is eaten in minimal quantities. That is why when we ask people, what did you eat? Normally people will not even mention the fish or the meat till you probe further before they mention that. So the basic units are the amino acids, and there are 20 different amino acids that are important in human nutrition. 20 amino acids that are important in human nutrition. 9 of these amino acids are essential. And once again, when we talk of essentiality in nutrition, it means that it must be present in the diet. So these 9 amino acids must be present in the diet because the body cannot make them. And there are 11 of them that are known as non-essential. What that means is that the body can make them. So far as we have some nitrogen floating in the body, we have some carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, the body can synthesize these amino acids. However, there's another group which we call conditionally essential. That is, they are essential for certain groups and not for everybody. So it is important to be able to differentiate. The non-essential ones are key, that by all means, whatever we eat, we should have them. Yes, the essential amino acids, I have them listed on the screen for you. But the most important that we find it as a major challenge in our part of the world is lysine and tryptophan. Lysine and tryptophan. And when it comes to children, arginine is very, very important. It's very, very important. It doesn't mean the rest are not important. They are, but lysine and tryptophan seems to be the major challenge among the rest for us in Ghana. So we have the diagram to show some of the essential amino acids, how they look like. Yes, and this structure tells us that, yes, the body cannot easily form them. And therefore, we have to eat our meat, we have to eat our beans, we have to eat our granules to be able to get these things from them. So it is very, very essential that we eat our animal products as well as our plant products. That gives us the essential amino acids. What are some of the plant products? We have our meat and meat products. We have our fish and fish products. And then we also have eggs. We also have eggs. They are also rich in the essential amino acids and all other amino acids. However, I want to draw attention to this fact that wele, which we all know, the skin, is not, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. So let us not give it to our children. It is just a delicacy. And even right now, it is so expensive. So that money that will be used to buy the wele, it is important that we use it to buy eggs that can be given to the children. Or even the Kita school boys or the anchovies that can be made into the powder form and given to the children, mixed with the food. That is very, very important. Animal source, good essential amino acids for the children. And then when we talk of the plant proteins, we also have from our legumes, our beans, our cereals, even our maize. They all contain. But one thing about the plant proteins is that they do lack some of the essential amino acids. That is why we always want combinations. Once we combine them, then we are complementing each other. We are able to get. So eating one food source from the plant is not the best. It's not the best. So we also have what we call complementary proteins. And this is what comes into play when you discuss the quality of the protein. When you talk of the quality, that is how many of the essential amino acid does it contain? How many, how much do we have there? It is very, very important. So quality is different from quantity. We can eat a lot, but actually there is nothing in it. So it is very, very important that we think of quality over quantity. Very, very important. So the animal products, they have a higher quality, and then the soy proteins, unlike the other. So we call them complete proteins, whereas those from the plant sources, most of them we call them incomplete proteins. And because of that, we need to combine foods to have complementarity, where we'll get some of the amino acids from other plant source foods to add to another plant source, so then we get a complete protein. So that is why we advise people not to eat only one food source. For example, eating kenke and shito is not good. Eating kenke plus bean stew is wonderful. The protein that is from the kenke that is not of good quality, you also get that is from the beans, which is all good quality. They combine. What is lacking in the beans will be provided from the kenke. So it is very, very important that we combine so that we can get good quality protein. So examples of complementary protein, when we take the legumes, they are low in essential amino acid methionine, but they are high in the essential amino acid lysine. And if you recall, I mentioned that lysine is a challenge. When we take our other grains like the cereal maize, they are high in methionine but low in lysine. So if you eat beans plus kenke, which is from the cereal grain, then we get a complete protein. Example is also eating rice and beans, the same thing. Rice is very low in lysine, but it is high in methionine. So when you combine with the beans, you are more likely to get a better quality. So when I talk of rice and beans, I'm not talking about the one they sell outside that you can count the beans, pick them from it. No, 50-50. That is what it means to get the best of the complementarity of the proteins, of the amino acids, to get quality protein. So it is very, very important. So combining foods from various groups will add diversity. And as we increase diversity in our food, what it means is that we are also getting other nutrients that otherwise will not be in one particular food. So it is not just protein quality, but improving the total quality of the diet. So diversification, having a lot of food groups together, eating from different sources is the key to obtaining quality diet and quality protein. So this chart shows us how we can combine. We have the grains, and I've listed a number of them: maize, rice, oats, bread, spaghetti, millet, sorghum. These are the common ones that we have in Ghana. And then when it comes to the legumes, we have beans, lentils. They are also very common now in the market. Granules, soybeans, and their products. And then we also have the oil seeds and nuts. We have agushi, cashew nuts, neri, and then other nuts. We have all other kinds of nuts in Ghana now. So if we combine, anybody who combines two has a better quality protein. If you combine the three, you are more than better, the best. So adding different groups is the best than eating just from one group. That is not the best. So these are our own food sources, our own food resources. So let us use that to promote quality protein, and especially when it comes to young child feeding. Young child feeding, they are growing, so they need quality protein. So it is very, very important that we advise mothers how to combine, not just to be giving the cocoa. The cocoa, you can add granules to it to make it rich, so you improve the protein quality of the cocoa that the child is eating. You can add beans to the maize to meal, then you make the cocoa out of it. So somebody eating cocoa with kose is better off, getting better protein quality than somebody drinking cocoa with white bread. It's carbo, nothing. So let us bear this in mind. So what are some of the functions of protein? Yes, proteins are enzymes. They are enzymes. All the reactions that go on in the body to break down our food, to form our body to grow, we need enzymes. Enzymes are proteins. So if we don't eat good quality proteins, what it means is that we cannot have the body to function properly. We cannot form the enzymes. So it is important that we have the quality protein in the diet to be able to form the enzymes that we need. Proteins are enzymes. Transport. Proteins also play an important role when it comes to transport of substances. Yes, we have to transport sodium from one end in the body to the other. We need protein as a carrier. And then another one, which is a very, very important one as a carrier protein, is retinol binding protein. Retinol is vitamin A. If you eat, you have the retinol in the system. For the retinol to move, to function, you need protein to carry it. So protein as a carrier for transport is essential. That is why we need to make sure that our children are having quality protein. That is why you will see in the hospitals that most of our Kwashiorkor patients, our PM patients, they are also vitamin A deficient. Even when you give them the vitamin A capsule and they are not getting the protein, how does it move to its place, to the eye to function, to other bodily parts? Without protein, it cannot function. So protein as a transport medium is key. That's why we need to look at quality. Structure. Structural proteins, yes, proteins are important to form muscle, the fiber, body fiber, tissues, connective tissues, our tissues, our body, to movement. Yes, we need protein. Without proteins, we cannot. There's no fiber, no movement. You see, most of the marasmic children, they've lost all their body tissues, and therefore they cannot move. That's why they just lie there. Nothing. There's no muscle structure. So it is very, very important that we have quality protein in our diet. Yes, when it comes to hormones, we have the male hormones, the female hormones, and I mentioned insulin and glucagon as they regulate carbohydrates metabolism in the body. Yes, they are all proteins. Without proteins, we cannot form these hormones. Therefore, it becomes a challenge. The same way, assuming the snake comes into this classroom, we have to run away. For us to run, we need energy. We need to release adrenaline. Yes, we need, this is also hormone. It is very, very important. So hormones are key, and they are all proteins. Yes, our immune system, antibodies, yes, that fight the infections, they are formed from proteins. So without proteins, how the child becomes, immune system becomes very low. Becomes very low. It's not only children, adults, our antibodies to fight the infections for us. we need proteins. So anybody who is protein deficiency, then it means that your immune system also goes very low. And we see this very common among our protein energy malnourished children. Then fluid balance within the body. Yes, osmosis, water to move from one of higher to a lower gradient. Yes, we need proteins. And when it comes to formation of edema, which we see with our Kwashiorkor children, accumulation of fluid, is because of lack of protein. And which type of protein? Albumin from the white egg. Albumin is the white egg. No, even people who undergo surgery, yes, they need albumin to prevent accumulation of water. And if we have white egg there, that can do it. It's of high quality. The albumin is there. So it is very, very important that we make sure that we are having quality protein for everybody across the life stages. Yes, proteins also play an important role when it comes to maintaining acid-base balance within the body. The blood should be neutral. It shouldn't be alkaline. It shouldn't be acidic. Otherwise, we'll die. So proteins do that. They act as buffers to neutralize. When the body is getting too acidic, they neutralize it. When it's becoming too alkaline too, they help it to go to normality. And then lastly, I've mentioned energy. Energy. Protein can provide energy, but that shouldn't happen, because if you recall, I mentioned the nitrogen that it contains. However, during starvation, let's take the war-torn zones. You see the people become very thin. There's no muscle. The fat is used. When the fat, everything is gone, then the muscle is also broken down for energy. That is why you see them very skinny. You can count the ribs, So what it means that we didn't spare protein, because there's no carbohydrate in the system. They are not getting food. So starvation. And that is what we see with the marasmic patients. So it is very, very important. Now, all these functions, no other nutrient can do it except protein. Except protein. So it is important that we make sure that we have the minimum amount of carbohydrate in the diet so that we spare protein to perform its function. When we eat, what are the protein sources we've mentioned from both animal and plant, and we saw pictures of them. All our foods contain some amount of protein, but we saw which ones are of high quality and which ones are of low quality. Yes, digestion in the mouth, nothing basically happens. It is in the stomach that we get some carbohydrate, protein digestion to start. Then from there into the small intestines where the digestion continues. Yes, protein enzymes work best in the stomach in the acidic medium, and the HCl that is produced in the stomach helps activate the enzymes and make them to work very well. Very, very important. Then from there, they are broken down further in the lumen of the small intestines. In the lumen of the small intestines, and then it is at the same point in the small intestines that is where they are absorbed into the blood, and then they are moved into circulation to all parts of the body where need be for their utilization. So it is very, very important. And the pancreas play an important role when it enters into the small intestine. So the pancreas, which is an accessory organ, note, provides all the enzymes that are necessary for carbohydrate digestion, fat digestion, as well as protein digestion. So think about it. If the pancreas is diseased, then there's a challenge with digestion. Think about it. And then the liver also plays an important role, because everything after digestion and absorption goes to the liver. If there's any poison, it will be detoxified by the liver. So if the liver is diseased, note there's a challenge. Also, the liver also provides the bile that is needed when we come to fat digestion. So you should be able to relate structure to function. Very, very important. Yes, so this flow diagram also gives you a summary. And once you remember this flow diagram, you should be able to answer any question regarding protein digestion and absorption. Yes, are there problems with eating too much or too little protein? Yes, there are. Overeating protein is not a major problem in Ghana. It's not a major problem. However, there's a problem because some of our people eating too much protein with the red meat and so forth increases blood cholesterol. They also eat a lot of fat with it, yes. And too much of the protein also lead to gout development, yes, in the elderly. So we have to be aware. However, the major challenge that we have with protein nutrition in Ghana and then in the sub-region Africa is not getting enough of the protein. And this is skewed towards most of our children. And this manifests itself in two major forms, Kwashiorkor and Marasmus. Kwashiorkor, basically not too much protein, more of carbohydrate. Whereas Marasmus, the child is actually starved. The child is actually starved. Then we have a bridge between Kwashiorkor and Marasmus, which is known as MARASMIC Kwashiorkor. And with the MARASMIC Kwashiorkor, the child shows features of both Kwashiorkor and Marasmus. So when you look at the diagram, you see some of the features. Too little protein, yes, Kwashiorkor and Marasmus. There is growth failure, growth retardation is very common. The muscle mass is not there. There is decreased immunity, weakening of the heart and respiratory system, finally death, with too little protein for the children under 5. It's very common in Africa, Ghana not excluded. So I've mentioned already Kwashiorkor and Marasmus as the major ones. So what are some of the symptoms? Yes, we see edema, and most of the time, parents, when the child is suffering from Kwashiorkor, do not realize that. What they see is that the child, because of the edema, the child blows, the round face, they think the child is growing fat. But it's because of the accumulation of the water, the edema. And that alone tells us there's lack of protein, albumin. And if you recall the functions of proteins that I mentioned about albumin to help to transport. So it creates osmotic gradient for movement of water that accumulates at the arteria and into the blood, but this does not happen because of lack of protein. There's enlargement of the liver. You see the pot belly in the picture that is on your screen. The hair becomes very light, and when you hold it, sometimes it comes off. Easy. There is skin lesions, yes, with the Kwashiorkor patients. And the type of edema that we see is called pitted edema. When you press it, it stays. It makes a dent. It doesn't come out. Very, very important for us to note that. Then the child is usually apathetic. Look at the diagram over there. No, very sad, edematous. And then you see the skin lesions. Yes, it's called flaky paint dermatosis. It is coming off. Yes, it's like a child who has received some burns, but there's no burns. It's due to the lack of protein. Yes, it affects the skin and all that. So it is very, very important. But we can have easy protein food sources, like the beans. As we combine them from what we saw, the combinations, we can improve upon that. Then we also have the Marasmus. As I mentioned here, the child is basically starved. The child is basically starved. No, has lost all subcutaneous fat, no, and has lost all muscle. So this is starvation. And I'm sure since you'll be in the hospital, you see a lot at the children's block as well as at the Princess Marie Louis Hospital, the children's hospital. So both protein and carbohydrates is a challenge for such a child with Marasmus. So the child is wasted, very weak, very anemic, and death is very common among this particular group of children with Marasmus. Then the third one, which I said is a bridge between Kwashiorkor and Marasmus, it shows features of both. So when you look at this child, when you look there, you can count the ribs. You can see that is typical of a marasmic child. Look at the hair, typical of Kwashiorkor child. Look at the legs. You see edema, typical of a Kwashiorkor child. So here she is showing both characteristics. So this is marasmic Kwashiorkor. So you should be able to differentiate between Marasmus, Kwashiorkor, and a child who is suffering from marasmic Kwashiorkor. Yes, and this table gives a summary of some of the features for both Kwashiorkor and Marasmus. Very easy. But as I said, once you look at the pictures, you can always picture it when the question is posed to you. Once you remember the pictures, you can easily say what the features are. And this is what you should know. Because you should, when you go into a community or you're in the clinic and a mother brings a child, just by looking at the child, you should be able to classify the child and know how to go about managing such a child. Yes. Another area that we often forget is vegetarians. Yes. We have different types. Yes. And they do not eat the meat, which we usually will say is the primary source. Is the primary source. However, you saw from the table that I showed earlier on, that combination of the plant foods, we can get the quality protein. So it is very, very important. So we have non-red meat vegetarians. Yes, so they don't eat the meat at all. Yes. What are some of the nutritional benefits? Yes, because they don't eat meat at all, they don't come into contact with the saturated fat. There's no cholesterol, because cholesterol is found only in meat and meat products. So being a vegetarian also has an advantage, but one should be able to combine the plant source foods very well to get the quality protein. So when we are having children, or we see children in the clinics who are parents are vegetarian, therefore forcing the children also to be vegetarian, we need to stress on mixing the food so that they get quality protein to be able to grow properly. Otherwise, we'll end up with more PM children in our hospital. So the nutritional concern is what I have explained. No special nutritional concerns, but when it comes to young child feeding, it is very, very important because they are growing, so they need high quality protein. Then we also have the lacto-ovo-vegetarian. Yes, they eat milk and eggs, so there isn't much of a problem here. Yes, like the meat eaters. However, let me mention about the eggs. If the person is, because the person is lacto-vegetarian, so therefore eating too much of eggs, we also have to be worried because the yolk contains a lot of cholesterol, and therefore we don't advise taking more than 3 eggs, if you are not sure of the person's lipid panel. So to be sure, sometimes we need to ask them to do a cholesterol check. Then we know what they are eating is in the right amount. Otherwise, the person will also be overloading on the cholesterol. It doesn't work for everybody. Somebody can eat 20 eggs a day because the person's system is different from yours. So it is always best that we follow with the lipid panel to give the right advice. Yes, I've mentioned that already. Yes, and then also if the person is also eating a lot of cheese, yes, that is also high. Right now, with the onset of globalization of market systems, we have these cheeses, all kinds, on our open market. And most of the time, things that come here, we see that things that are loaded, the high-fat cheeses, we find them on our market, in our malls. So we need to be aware and educate our clients who are vegetarians and are going to the milk and the milk products and then the cheese. Yes, because cheese is a milk product. We need to be considering that the whole milk is high in cholesterol because it is coming from animal products. Then we have the strict vegetarians, no animal food at all. So they have the advantage. They are basically based on plants. So the nutritional concerns basically is how to get them to improve upon their protein quality. But as we understand that combining foods 2 or more will be an easy way to improve the protein quality. That is the key. And then another important problem with them is vitamin B12. B12 is basically from animal source. So then they have to be on vitamins, the B12 vitamins, so that they don't mix on it. Because when B12 is lacking, they are easily prone to macrocytic anemia. So it is very, very important that we encourage them to take the supplement. So I think this makes it very easy. Kwashiorkor continues to be a challenge in Ghana. And one thing we should also know is that it doesn't mean that because we are saying children under 5, it doesn't mean that adults also don't suffer from it. Adults suffer from protein energy malnutrition. And the typical examples, as I mentioned, we see in the war-torn zones, and then areas where there is starvation, we have the fights, we have bushfires and whatnot. We see our adults also suffering from PEM. So it is up to us, when we are called in, to be able to manage, to know the food sources, taking into consideration their background, their economic status. Then we can talk about the plant source foods, the legumes which are cheaper, or cheaper sources like the Kita school boys, the herrings and whatnot. They are cheaper, that we can manage. Small amounts of that with the beans can help to prevent undernutrition due to protein deficiency. We've seen the functions. Fat cannot perform in your functions of protein. Carbohydrates cannot perform. So let us make sure we are getting the protein, and we have the minimum amount of carbohydrate to spare protein to perform its functions and not to be used for energy. That is why I put the energy last. If there is nothing at all before energy should be used, when you look at the functions as I've listed them. Yes. So read your handouts, and then you can also get in touch with me online if you have any challenges. Thank you. See you next week. We'll take on with micronutrients. Thank you.